All right, welcome everyone. Getting back to weekly streams here at TNT Live. I am with Wyatt, and we have hot breaking news. The most important story in the entire universe. I know Wyatt sent me 17,000 text messages as soon as he learned, but Demi Lovato has reverted her pronouns back to she and her. So we're extending this episode to a 4.5 hour one because we do think this is a bigger deal than a extended version of a Lord of the Rings movie, as her pronouns, which were they them 15 minutes ago, are now she her. So just so you know, in Canada, it was a crime to call her a she or a woman yesterday. Today it is a crime to not call her a woman. So we will be. We ask everyone out there in the comment section and at home, find out what your friends think of Demi Lovato. Have they misgendered her? Have they not misgendered her? Remember yesterday, if they called her, that is misgendering today. Zur is now misgendering. So
Honestly, just cancel a member of your family anyways. Just who cares what they said? They did
Report your
something
family
wrong.
members to the Canadian authorities over this the improper use of pronouns, as this is currently the number one story on planet Earth. Wyatt, where were you the moment you learned of this this development?
I was at work. Everything stopped. Everyone took off their hats as soon as she posted the update, and we all just sort of victory screeched for like 10 minutes when we figured out, or when we found out that she finally fully embraced her third identity at this point, because she was a woman before, then she was a they them, and now on her Instagram bio she's simultaneously gender neutral as well as female.
Stunning and brave. Stunning
Yeah,
and brave. And yeah, we're going to
I'm
get
still
into the
crying.
serious stuff in a minute. We're just doing this to kill time until people get in here. But I mean, on a more serious note, this does show that we do have a problem in the West where, like, again, this stuff would be a hilarious joke. It is a hilarious joke, but it would be funnier if people didn't go to jail in Canada for this stuff and lose their children. So remember, in Canada, part of the conversion therapy law, like, again, I say this a lot. We're all against conversion therapy as it's classically thought of. No one here, even the most right-wing person, wants to hook up a homosexual person to electroshock therapy. Show them pictures of a Brad Pitt, show them pictures of insert, 25-year-old movie star lady girl thing, and then, like, I don't know, reverse that. No one wants to do that, okay? And that's what we think of as conversion therapy. But in Canada, conversion therapy is also defined as if a 7-year-old girl says, "Mommy, Daddy, I think I'm a boy," and you say, "Hold on, let's talk about this. Let's go to a therapist to see if there's any underlying issues." That's conversion therapy. You could be sent to jail. You can have your children taken away. And the fact that this is so fluid really shows that all the parents who are going to go to jail in the next 10 years are actually right.
The funny thing is, you get called a conspiracy theorist from simply just reading the WEF's website, yet for some reason people on the left are not called conspiracy theorists for supposedly believing that there is a cultic group of Quakers out there who are going to try and arrest all gay people.
That is true, yeah. Like, it's right. It's the same sort of thing of, like, I made this point on the Richard Serrett show when we were talking about Stephen Harper endorsing Pierre Poilievre. Right, you're called a conspiracy theorist on the right if you think that Klaus Schwab is in control of Justin Trudeau. Now, like, there's elements of, like, wacky thinking towards that. Like, there's not a hologram.
He's not
in
literally
Justin
getting on the
office.
phone with them every day.
Right, it's not like Klaus Schwab calls Justin Trudeau and says, "Institutes of farming policy, takeaways of fertilizer," and he's like, "Yes, my lord." But the liberal government is following the outlines of the World Economic Forum for other lefty reasons that we've outlined ad nauseum at the show. So, and I made the point in the article, like, why does it matter why he's doing this crazy nonsense?
Right? Ideologically captured or controlled is effectively going to be the same thing. One's more realistic, but essentially it still gets the person doing stupid things on behalf of sort of internationalist interests anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's like, yeah, but you're not called a wacky conspiracy theorist if you're on the left and you attempt to be a mind reader and say that even if someone denies wanting to do something, they can just assert that you secretly want to do something and everyone will buy it as some sort of legitimate form of political discourse. Yet if you literally see someone on the left doing something crazy and you're like, why are you doing that crazy thing? They're like, what are you doing? Why are you being so mean to this person? You know what? You're racist and a conspiracy theorist because you don't like something that Justin Trudeau is doing.
Yeah, and the equivalent conspiracy theory, to finish off my point, is the left is allowed to believe that Stephen Harper is in control of every conservative person in the Canadian government. So everyone from Andrew Scheer to Pierre Poilievre all are controlled by Stephen Harper and what he says. And everyone, right? That's not conspiracy, right? Which is clearly a crazy thing to think. But it's like you could say, yes, Stephen Harper has influence over the Conservative Party right now as former leader and as a respected person within the Conservative movement of Canada. He wields a certain type of power. But like the left pretends that, like, no. Okay, so that out of the way, let's get to what the show is going to start on. Justin Trudeau's on vacation again. So there's a lot of people that will slam Justin Trudeau for being on vacation. If you have followed me for a long time, I am not one of them. I think this is the best thing he does as Prime Minister. I am 100% in favor of Justin Trudeau taking more and more vacation days. I once started a fake GoFundMe and I calculated for $1 million a year, we could have him surfing in Tofino every single day. That would be just $1 million if we can get, everyone who doesn't like Justin Trudeau to just give $1. That would be enough to keep him surfing until the next election. And I think it's very much worth it because think of it, guys. When he is surfing in Tofino, he can't do anything that crazy. My best example of this, I think, is early 2020 when the world was falling apart and lots of stuff was happening and everyone's like, is World War III going to happen because of Iran? And then the Iranians murdered 55 Canadians and shot down an airplane liner and COVID was happening. And where's the Prime Minister? We have this global outbreak of a disease and dozens of Canadians have just been murdered. And I was the only one saying it is a very good thing that the Prime Minister is missing right now. A very good thing. Because when Justin Trudeau came back, he did nothing to help COVID. He made everything worse. And the first thing he did on the Iranian airliner being shot down is he literally went to Javad Zarif, Iran's foreign minister, and bowed down to him after he murdered a bunch of Canadians. So I think this is great. I think there should be more vacations. And yeah, Matt and I agree. Permanent vacation would be the best. Let's send him on one. For just $1 for everyone who hates him, we can send him to Tofino and he could be surfing every day. And while he's surfing out in BC, he's not going to be able to call any of us racist, blah, 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 blah. Some of his best moments as Prime Minister are when he's completely away.
His approval rating bounces back so hard when he just shuts up for 2 weeks and goes and just like, I don't know, drinks mimosas by the pool. It's insane. Like he just went on a bit of a charm offensive for the last 3 weeks here, going to the Calgary Stampede and running around, like, getting a new haircut for some reason, and a bunch of other crap. And it's like during that time, his approval rating kept going down because people kept seeing him all over the place, and they're just like, leave us alone. And then he finally figured out, like, oh yeah, I should go to like Puerto Rico or wherever he is in the Caribbean right now, and I'll just lay low for 2 weeks, and then a bunch of liberals in Toronto will forget that I suck at my job and they'll vote for me next election again.
Yeah, that's basically the thing. I mean, another one of his great moments, as I just want to recall some of the highlights of Justin Trudeau vacationing time. My favorite Justin Trudeau vacation on the screen died, is the Be Sad Day. Remember our new Indigenous Be Sad holiday? What's it called? Truth and Reconciliation Day. What's it called?
It's that.
Okay, it's called Truth and Reconciliation Day. So he invents a new holiday. We're all supposed to be very sad and remember how terrible Canada is for all these different reasons. And I had made the point literally the day before that don't set people up for failure. When you give people a long weekend, they're going to want to go on vacation. They're going to want to have fun. A lot of you work hard. So when you have a 3-day weekend, you want to take the family somewhere. Human nature, great, right? You don't want to have people just having a 3-day weekend and then like having a beer with their friends and posting a picture and then everyone calling them racist. And that was the problem. We should have had a positive holiday for the Indigenous, blah, 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 blah.
Why aren't you caning yourself instead of enjoying the weekend?
And then literally day one of Be Sad Indigenous Day, Justin Trudeau goes surfing. Literally day one.
It was the great. The imagistics of it were so amazing too, because when they found out he left, the first videos is just him walking away from a camera, just walking away from people.
So good.
I know, but that was actually, he was embracing the true spirit of any long weekend holiday. It is to just go to your summer home and drink. There's really nothing else to it. So he actually did it properly. Yet he also was going after people for not wanting to pass the new holiday. So yeah, it's he got sort of he always wants to have his cake and eat it too, and sometimes the media lets him do it.
Yeah, the media lets him get away with this. I mean, Justin Trudeau, also known as Gropey McBlackface, literally in the early 2000s, admitted to sexually assaulting Rose Knight, I believe, and his excuse at the time, remember, everyone thinks the excuse is, well, she experienced it differently. That's the excuse he gave as prime minister. His excuse at the time was, had he known she was a journalist, she wouldn't have done it. His excuse at the time was, oh, oops, I only sexually assault powerless women. I usually never sexually assault women with the power to stop me where there's repercussions for my actions. That's in the newspaper. That was printed. That was and now it's, oh, she experienced it differently, even though and the media just totally lets him get away with this. So like, it drove me crazy. Like, there's a sexual assault case for Canada, like junior hockey, whatever. There's one in 2018 and 2003. And the 2018 one, from what I'm reading, looks pretty legit. And the woman seems pretty credible. She went to the authorities the day after. So big props to her for this isn't like she sat on this for 5 years and then did something when she felt it was convenient. No. But then Justin Trudeau starts lecturing Canada hockey on, respecting women and blah, 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 blah. This is terrible. The country's terrible. It's like, dude, you admitted to sexually assaulting women. And your excuse at the time is, I usually only sexually assault powerless women. So isn't this what you do, Justin? Is these guys were a bunch of 18-year-old hockey players, and they were in a group, and they picked on some women who had less power than them. Isn't that what you did when you were that age and you admitted it to? Like, I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying this is very, very bad. I'm just saying the prime minister has done it, and we let him get away and pretend that he hasn't.
No, yeah. Expectations on a leader should always be higher than they are on people underneath them. But it immediately flips as soon as you have a liberal prime minister, and not even exactly liberal prime minister, a liberal prime minister who really panders to the media. And I'm not just talking about dollars. I'm talking about in terms of serving up. Serving up their narrative in government so that they get to sort of defend like their mascot. So of course they'll let their mascot get away with anything, and they'll just kind of undercover things. They don't even the thing with fake news is most of the news is not fake. It's just not reported, or it's just reported very poorly. So technically they might have not gotten anything wrong with the story. So they went after him for going on vacation during his Truth and Reconciliation Day. But it was kind of this, Trudeau, really? And then it was kind of ended. It really was never a feeling of like they were bringing him back and hounding him for weeks and saying, well, why are you doing that? I know you're sorry about it, but what metric in your mind was making you think that you could do that, blah, blah, blah. It just kind of ended after they sort of lightly scolded him.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the media, Canadian media especially, and Trudeau, I mean, it might be a bit crass to keep it on the sexual references here, but it's very much one night stands. It's your hit it and quit it. So yeah, we covered it. But yeah, you did it once, and then you left it alone to say, yeah, I did it. Which is not a very good way of doing journalism or treating a woman. Let's keep the analogy as through line as we can. Yeah, so it's, we covered it once. We said it was bad that he went on vacation, and then we let it dissipate. Right? Whereas when Stephen Harper has a cabinet minister that spends $16 on an orange juice, right? Article after article after article. Mike Duffy, article after article. Throw all the cameras outside the trial. Make it a huge thing. Keep bringing it up, right? It leads off the top 15 minutes, right? It's when the SNC-Lavalin scandal was happening. I remember doing a Worst of CBC episode. They spent 15 minutes on Trump-Russia hoax, and then they literally spent 37 seconds on SNC-Lavalin. And that was the Canadian media. So,
and again, it was always,
covered it.
It was always from the angle of how is Trudeau going to use his genius to get out of this scandal. It was never like, wow, he's trying to destroy the country by absorbing the judiciary into the PMO.
Yeah, it was things like, will this scandal hurt him in the election? How will people react to it? So yes, people don't like scandals, but generally scandals dissipate over 2 months. So they give analysis on people's reaction to it without explaining what it was and getting into it, right? And then with the Trump-Russia thing, even though there was nothing there, they're like, oh, Trump's Russia collusion. So he colluded with the Russians. We know this. Now we're waiting for James Comey to get to the bottom of it. Now, James Comey said he had no evidence, but don't worry, Robert Mueller's on it. And even though Mueller said under oath he had no evidence, still, we got it. So yeah, that's how the media works on these type of things. So this is why, again, circling back, I don't like complaining when Justin Trudeau is on vacation. I think these are the best moments in our country over the last 8 years or whatever. It's going to be 10 years of Trudeau, and the year and a half that he spent on vacation, those are the best days. When he is on vacation, he can't, make farming illegal. He can't, make, criticizing Dr. Theresa Tam punishable by death or any of the things he wants to do. He just surfs around, and usually he does something in poor taste, and maybe a few liberals defect, but not many.
Well, one thing I just wanted to bring up about it is that I just think it gives off the mentality that he like legitimately just thinks he deserves all this time. Not that he doesn't. When I say not that he doesn't, I mean like not that I give a crap how much people take vacations at all. Take a vacation wherever you want, because to a certain extent, government works the best when they're not doing very much. So honestly, everyone should just take a vacation. But there's just sort of this mentality about him that he actually genuinely thinks he works too hard. And even though he mostly just does absolutely nothing. And the story I want to parallel with this is just the fact that there had to come out reports, like multiple reports, or at least one report. What am I saying, multiple? But reports of Justin Trudeau getting offered 17 photos of himself, or 17 self-portraits, or like not self-portraits, but like paintings of himself. There is something where like you're a little bit too easy to read if like a bunch of governments all over the world, if like Togo comes up to you and they're like, you want a painting of yourself, and they're like literally coming into your office right before Benin walks into your office and offers the exact same thing. There's like, he's so egotistical, and he's the type of egotistical that's really bad is that everyone understands that he's just a parrot who likes pretty things. He's just like a bird who likes to pick up like shiny stones.
Yeah, and I think there's also an essence of he's a very lazy thinker. And I think he totally kind of buys into the leftist thing. So he doesn't understand really what he's doing, but he knows he's doing the right thing. So he doesn't understand how farms work, doesn't understand any of the farming metrics. So he just declares we'll reduce nitrogen to solve climate change because climate change is the most important thing in the world. And I'll fix it with these things. And I truly think because the media gives him no backlash, so he's never faced with the reality of what he does. I'm not going to go visit a farm unless I know, like, I own this. Like, the only time he visits a farm is if it's like whatever farming conglomerate that gets subsidies, right? And they're totally reliant on liberal subsidies and whatever. Or
Or it's
like
just a 60-year-old hobbyist farmer who's basically retired, who votes liberal, who's going to let him go pick tomatoes on camera for a little bit.
Yeah, or like one of those like stupid organic like self farms, like a hippie lady who's like, I grow like turnips, and these turnips are used to fight racism. Sure thing,
Yeah.
Cheryl. Sure thing. But those are the farms that Trudeau would visit.
And the thing is, what I think the point that you and I are both trying to make here is that Trudeau genuinely doesn't know why his fertilizer ban, like effective fertilizer ban, is stupid. I don't think he's ever actually bumped into a real farmer who's articulated why this is going to destroy their business and destroy yields and crops. Because the thing is, he only listens to interest groups that contain no actual farmers. It's like how the dairy farmers of Canada are running these stupid ads, like we want to be like have like net zero emissions by 2050. I'm like, no, they don't. It's just the board of people who are not dairy farmers or haven't been dairy farmers in a long time passing high-minded resolutions that they're never actually going to achieve because it's not a monopoly. It's not a monopolistic organization. It's just a very generic lobbying firm that's just saying pro-liberal things because the liberals are around. But Justin Trudeau says that and says, well, no, the farmers are so into it. Like, no, they're not. The lawyer they hired is into it.
Yeah, no, I think like you actually hit it near the end. Like, I actually think the real reason why you see the dairy farmers, right, LLP or whatever, saying, "Oh, we want to get to net 50," is, well, that's a major lobbying group that gets subsidies. So they're being smart and they're saying things that Justin Trudeau wants to hear on TV for kickbacks. So they're essentially running advertisements to the liberals and paying money to run them, knowing that they'll get 10 times what they're spending in advertising as kickbacks from Justin Trudeau in this sort of quasi/fundy type thing. This is this is essentially what the We Charity does, but this is not really illegal, or this is quasi legal. Like, it's not illegal, but it's transparent to anyone who can see what's going on. That's why you see the Dairy Farmers Union saying like, oh yeah, we're gonna get to net zero. There's gonna be no emissions. We're gonna by the year 2050, guys, by the year 2050, the second law of thermodynamics will be canceled. It'll be canceled. Yeah. That's essentially what they're saying. And this is from the cult of science. I don't want to say that, like, you're the more Christian one. Like, will it offend you if I call it the Church of Science? Like, to all the leftists who just like blindly believe what is labeled science? Because I think
that's fine. That's just labeling what it is, which is idolatry.
I mean, with the Church of Science and their global warming stuff, like, it's so counterfactual. All of it is like, are there ecological problems? Are there environmental problems? Yes. Do we need to address them? Yes. But literally everything is like, it's fantasy talk. And like, net zero emissions. Like, sorry, you can't transfer energy from one form to another without a loss in energy. Second law of thermodynamics. That's why you can't have perpetual energy. Like, this is well known. This is one of the laws of the universe. If we can break this, like, maybe there's an alien species out there that has cracked this one with like super quantum hyperloop technology, and like they're at Area 51 or something. Maybe, okay. And if you think we're going to reach advanced alien technology by 2050, you're not a scientist. You're not a science person. Another like, climate fact that like facts I never talked about, that deaths from climate. I can't remember the number. It's like, I'm just going to pull some numbers out of my ass right here. Let's say like globally, there's like 100,000 climate related deaths a year, or a million, whatever the number. Let's just say a million. There's a million climate related deaths every year. And there are climate related deaths every year. But 90% of climate related deaths are seniors who die in their house in the winter because they don't have money to heat their home. So like, when we talk about climate related deaths, the vast majority of climate related deaths are too cold. It's people too cold. So when we talk about, you want to mitigate climate related deaths, it's like, well, we need to ban farming to stop hurricanes, instead of, well, let's look at the data and what's the largest cause of climate related deaths. Well, it's actually seniors dying in their homes because they can't afford their heating.
And that's literally something that's solved with energy, and a lot of other climate disasters or like environmental disasters that they say are partly like to blame on the climate are all things that you need technology to solve. It's like mudslides in India are not solved by people turning down the thermostat, or like people turning off their AC every once in a while. It would be solved by probably people terraforming a little bit more, trying to actually level out certain issue areas, being able to plant more trees and whatnot. You'd have to have heavy industry come and fix that. It's not something where if we just sort of lower or keep we lower the temperature of the earth a little bit, it's just going to sort of balance out.
Yeah, this is what I've hated most about the climate change talk and the climate change cultists and the priests of climate change. And you hit on it right there. It's like, they're complicated environmental problems that exist all over the world, right? We're an incredible species, human beings. We are amazing. We're top predators, but being so good at what we do we overfish oceans? Yes. So there's a complicated solution of sometimes you have to put in caps and rotate and be more manageable. Like you're talking about mudslides. But the problem is we have so many complicated environmental issues that instead of addressing each complicated issue as an individual issue and trying to solve it, we amalgamate all of them into one giant ball. We call it climate change. And then we say, well, the way we solve this is CO2. We reduce emissions and we ban farming in Canada and the Netherlands and Sri Lanka. And then Sri Lanka was like, no, this government has to go because we're all going to starve to death.
No, definitely as well, especially on top of it, like whenever they talk about people who live in really warm climates and that like, all these people live in this area and there's heat waves every year or whatever, because I've seen this here and there wherever people are talking about, usually it's always the heat again that people sort of like talk about when it comes to the climate, when usually it, again, like you were saying, is always cold weather. That's the problem. People will just, if the earth cools or warms, people are going to move based on that. It's not just if it warms and sea levels rise slightly over time that people are going to move away from the coast. if things also get colder, people are also going to move based on that as well. There's no way of keeping it completely level where no one's ever going to have to get disrupted. The world tends to be quite disruptive, and the people are kind of imagining this fantasy realm that the Earth was never, where just things were just the exact same everywhere, and no matter where you went, everything was temperate and nice.
It wasn't Earth. It was the giant tortoise, Wyatt.
Yeah.
What Turtle Island. We were on Turtle Island. Use the proper terminology. Okay, so we're halfway in. We're half an hour in. Let's get into the more controversial part of the show, the spicier part where we pick fights that need to be picked. Let me know. You can text me how many people we have in the law. Throwing some punches at people who kind of need to be punched right now. So yeah, if you're enjoying the show, like, share, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Push all the buttons. If you don't push all those buttons, Justin Trudeau will climb under your bed tonight in blackface and pop out and start lecturing you on intersectional feminism. So very scary. All right. Important story. And I think it's important to point this out because Tamara Lich is a very good woman. She is an innocent woman, and she is being viciously persecuted by a vexatious, malevolent, petulant, spiteful government with the fullest extent of their power and what is obviously high-level collusion between the political, legal, and media factions of our country. All of that is bearing down on one woman who did nothing wrong. And every second she spends in jail is a travesty that makes Canada a less free and less great nation. The imprisonment of Tamara Lich is an abomination. This being said, the organization in charge of keeping Tamara Lich out of jail, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, seems dead set of putting her back in jail. And they are not in Tamara's best interest, in my opinion. What we have here is the JCCF seems to be planning another event to give Tamara Lich an award and inviting Tom Marazzo into the same room again. This, in my opinion, is grounds for malpractice. And the lawyers, this is where I think the JCCF should be disbanded as an organization for this. As a lawyer and as a law, well, the JCCF isn't a law firm, so I don't know how the Freedom Convoy has a retainer with them because they're not a law firm. They subcontract out, so I don't know how that works. But their job is number one to their clients. It is not to fundraise. You can fundraise. You can have a Tamara Lich honors event. But you cannot, as Tamara Lich's lawyer, have an event and schedule an event where someone that she's not allowed to talk to is scheduled to show up. They did this once before, and Tamara Lich went to jail. And
even there, we can just say let's just qualify this a lot. First time she gets arrested when she goes to the event, fair enough. Maybe they thought that the previous judge gave them permission. He did give them basically full permission to do this event. To go to it. I'm not sure if they actually asked whether or not it was okay if Tom Marazzo was there. Her technical real lawyer wasn't there, who's some guy named Greenspan, who's a defense lawyer that I believe the JCCF contracted out for her. But the JCCF hosted it, which I guess is the place that's contracting her legal defense for her. So you could say technically her representation is there. It's a little bit borderline. Doesn't really matter. She was already supposed to be allowed to go to that event. When the Crown took her there, that's still vexatious. They're clearly just trying to harass her. And even if she goes to another JCCF-sponsored event or another event sponsored by somebody that the JCCF or someone is encouraging her to go to where Tom Marazzo's there, yes, it's still wrong for the Crown to arrest her for that because it's not nonsensical that you don't arrest someone for unsubstantial bail violations. And this is fairly unsubstantial, especially because Tom Marazzo, frankly, was a pretty unsubstantial member of the Freedom Convoy organizers. But the fact that you keep deliberately pairing Tom Marazzo up with her at these events, and if you've ever met Tamara Lich or even talked to her on the phone, I have. She's a very nice person, and she probably won't say, "What are you guys doing? I'm not going to this event now." So they're basically putting her in positions where the Crown might go after her for nonsensical reasons. And to a certain extent, I can guarantee there's going to be new fundraisers based off the fact that she was arrested for another silly charge. or another silly bail violation. And every single time they do this, there's a chance that she gets another terrible judge who's going to put her away for 3 more weeks and just keep delaying the actual bail hearing. And then she'll finally get out again. They get their clips on the internet. And then, well, suddenly we need another event with Tamara Lich for some reason. But this is what it feels like. It's just like a cycle.
It does so many bad things. It makes Tamara's case like, what they're going to argue is like, okay, if you are the JCCF or you're the lawyers, what you want is to argue that there was nothing wrong with the Freedom Convoy. The judge ruled that it wasn't illegal for them to park there. Tamara isn't a threat to society. There was no violence. Tamara never advocated for violence. This is freedom of expression. Canada is a free country. If you are the lawyers for Trudeauistan, what you want to do is you want to build a case that Tamara is this wild, erratic, evil person. And I guarantee you that the crux of the Crown's case to punish her for what she did in February will be what she did after February. This is how it works. The Canadian legal system is not fair to people like Tamara. It won't be fair. There is a greater than 50% chance that Tamara Lich will not get a fair trial in a Canadian court. That's just the reality of the system we live in. Most judges are center-left, upper middle-class liberals. And a lot of judges, there's a good chance that Tamara draws a judge that will look for any excuse out there to crucify her. There's a very good chance.
At least slap one minor charge on her just for the purpose of making it seem like the government won on some grounds. It doesn't mean that she won't just outright win, even if she does get a liberal judge, that the liberal judge knows like, okay, I have nothing here. But even then, just flat out by giving the Crown prosecutors, who are flat out liberals, excuses to put her back in jail for bail violations or excuses to sort of collect the data on stuff that Tamara has been doing, as saying, oh, look at her flagrantly violating her bail, even though it's sort of silly that it's even considered a violation to talk to anyone who is associated with it, as if 2 of the organizers meet, suddenly a new Freedom Convoy is going to spread out up from the ground. It's still silly, but just because it's silly doesn't mean that you flagrantly violate it. Just as like a stand or some excuse to host more fundraisers. Like, maybe I couldn't go that far and say that's deliberately what they're doing, but that's the only reason I could think that you would do this multiple times. Again, Chris Barber, Daniel Bulford, Benjamin Dichter, multiple other Freedom Convoy organizers are not, looking to find looking to meet up with Tamara Lich at different events. Even though I know she knows some of those other people far better than Tom Marazzo, I don't think she ever met Tom until like halfway through the Freedom Convoy. Yet suddenly Tom Marazzo needs to be stapled to her side at all times.
Yeah, it's bizarre. So we'll get to Tom Marazzo and his moral failings here in a minute, but just to drive the point home, if you look at what Tamara has had to deal with so far in terms of judges, I think she's had 4 so far. Liberal who finally let her go after spending a week thinking about it, but kept her in jail and then one good one. So that's pretty much I think that's a pretty good example of what Canadian legal system is. Liberal who will think about it and do the right thing, and good judge who says there's no case here. What are you talking about? This is crazy. Objectively, here are the facts. So you're looking at a 25% chance that she gets a judge who says, okay, what does the law say? Okay, she broke no laws and you kept her in prison for 10 years? No. Done. There's a 25% chance that happening, and hopefully it happens. But if she gets a liberal hack, which there's a very good chance she will, that person will look for any reason to have her guilty. And I guarantee you, the Crown will argue the fact that she kept going to JCCF fundraisers is a part of malice, and it shows she's unstable and blah, blah. It doesn't show any of that. But a judge who's looking for any excuse to throw this woman in jail and be the hero of the Liberal Party and the cocktail party will pounce on this. So bringing it back to the JCCF, my point is the JCCF has to know this. The JCCF has to know that the prosecutor they are facing has the entire weight of the Canadian government behind him. He shouldn't, but he does. And he is extremely vexatious and extremely motivated to persecute Tamara with all malice and that he this is a clearly malicious prosecution. This is a malicious, heavy-handed prosecution of Tamara Lich to the extreme. To put her in a room deliberately with Tom Marazzo is malpractice. You know that they're going to throw her back in jail to this. You're then putting your client in a position where you know she's going to get thrown in jail for another month for nothing. And the fact that you could do that to an innocent woman who's already had to suffer so much is unconscionable to me. It's absolutely unconscionable. The JCCF should they need to take a walk and think about what they've done. They really need to rethink this. They cannot be doing this. If you want to bring Tamara in for another word, great. Just don't invite Tom Marazzo, Daniel Beaufort, Benjamin Dichter, Chris Babber, any of the others. Don't invite anyone else that the Crown says she can't have contact with. And I know she is under extremely onerous, ridiculous bail charges put on her by a liberal hack. Her bail conditions are ridiculous.
This has happened with a lot of other people as well. Just because the bail conditions or the sort of conditions that the government is putting on you temporarily are ridiculous does not mean that you then just go and violate them just to show that you can. This also happened, and this was what wore out my patience quite quickly with Artur Pawlowski in Calgary, is whenever he would go out and violate his bail conditions. Sometimes he'd be violating just the law and it had nothing to do with his bail conditions. He was walking up onto people's private property and refusing to leave. It's like, yeah, I think that your initial charges were silly and then you can convicted on them and the judge telling you that you're only allowed to say good things about lockdowns was ridiculous. But then don't go to Jason Coping's house and stand around on his on his lawn. And I even heard tapes of police officers going to arrest him saying, don't do this. It's literally not good for your case. We don't want to arrest you. Why are you doing this? And it's like, he was just basically doing it almost for fundraisers at some point. And that's the only thing I can conclude when you're doing something over and over again that leads to the same conclusion. And it's like, yeah, we can argue all day long that shouldn't happen. But when you're asking for people's hard-earned money to support you, it's getting a little bit callous after a little bit when you refuse to even make the slightest concession in order to win the case that you're in.
Yeah.
And now this is not on Tamara. This is on the JCCF.
My computer is like half exploded. How's the chat doing so far?
No, we're actually doing oddly well. I thought someone would have threatened to bomb our houses by now for saying something about the JCCF.
That's what like. I think we.
See, the audience is so mature.
This is why we do this, because I think the audience is rather intelligent, and I think if you just treat people like they're intelligent beings, they act like intelligent beings, and I think this all makes sense to people. All right, so let's get on to the Tom Marazzo part. So we're looking for the video right now. We'll post it hopefully to our YouTube tomorrow of Tom Marazzo's bizarre Canada Day speech. And Tom Marazzo, if you were watching the Canada Day stuff, if you weren't, he basically got up there and made this bizarre talk about obey law and order and respect the police and pretty much insinuate the convoy was lawlessness and the entire gathering was lawlessness. And he kind of started getting heckled. Well, he did get heckled. And then he had a meltdown and stormed off stage and threw a temper tantrum. For Tom Marazzo to be this guy who is always preaching, law and order and respect the law. And the law is the law is the law. And we must respect the law of the law of the law. And it's like, dude, what are you saying? Like, the whole freedom convoy is basically what the government is doing is unconstitutional. These laws are not valid or moral. So we honk. The government is evil. Like the mandates and all the COVID laws and rules are like violate constitutional freedoms. Honk. That was the whole thing, right? The Canada Day March. You're still doing ridiculous COVID nonsense. Honk. This is our point. And besides that, like Tom Marazzo, if you take his speech literally, it's like, okay, well, Tamara has bail conditions. Now, so like you can't have Tom Marazzo's position and then go to that JCCF fundraiser and meet with Tamara, because what you're saying is, well, I'm obeying the law, but me going here will put another woman in jail for ridiculous reasons. And I don't think Tamara should go to jail for being at a table with Tom Marazzo. But if Tom Marazzo is going to preach 100% blind obedience to whatever the law is at the time, well, sorry, but the law at the time said you couldn't sit next to Tamara Lich.
And also here, like Tamara Lich is a beautifully nice person. She is not going to, if Tom Marazzo shows up to an event and say, Tom, please leave. I don't want to go to prison for another 29 days. She's not going to do that. So whenever she's suggested to go to these things, I doubt that she's going to push back a lot. And again, it's just because she's incredibly nice, and
Tamara's the epitome of a
she will
right-wing
make cutout. Yeah, she will make cutouts for anyone in order to be nice to them. And they're basically taking advantage of that to put her in situations like, wow, that evil prosecutor just put you in prison again. I'm like, well, stop helping him. Stop literally going to his house and basically dropping off a pile of evidence. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like, yes. So for Tom to do this, it's like again, the Tom Marazzo thing needs to stop. And like, this is why, like, we've left him alone for a while. Like, remember, if you guys remember, he actually came on TNT Live, and I'll give you the background. So if you want to say, oh, we're spiteful against Tom Marazzo because he blocked us on Twitter or whatever it is, we'll give you the whole thing. So I had met Tom Marazzo during the convoy covering it. And like, Tom at the beginning was like, he's like the logistics guy in the convoy. He does logistics. And he'd be like, all right, guys, and Ben will tell you this, like, he was like, I'm going to be behind the scenes. I'm going to be behind the scenes. No one's going to know I'm here. And then we're like, okay, he's logistics guy. And then like the next day he's hosting a press conference about whatever. And it's like, okay, I guess he's not behind the scenes. He's got a taste of the limelight. And listen, as a former stand-up comedian, I don't begrudge anyone who falls in love with the microphone. Okay? It's fine. I like talking to, great. It is, maybe you found your calling. I don't think he's the greatest public speaker, but fine. You're allowed to do that. So I got a bit drunk on the microphone. Whatever. He did that. Right? And then after the convoy, right? Because Tom Marazzo wasn't a big public figure in the convoy until after it. He was sort of like because all the big figures in the convoy, Tamara, Dichter, Chris Babber, like all of them were either like arrested by the government and put out Minerva injunctions or had to deal with like basically the government.
Or like the day-to-day face, of it, putting out statements and whatnot. Like Daniel Balford was not even really arrested, but he was out front helping out a lot, and you knew exactly what he was doing day to day. With Tom Marazzo, it's really hard to name what he was doing. And it's actually, even though your screen's completely black and you can't see the chat, that's exactly what Callum Jackman was asking. He says, why is Tom Marazzo a high-profile person in this? Because it certainly doesn't seem like he did a lot.
Yeah, okay. So this is what I'm explaining. Let me get to it. So if you want to say like all the tier A people, right, in convoy organizing, they were all put under like Minerva injunctions and court injunctions to shut up. So when people ask like, oh, where did the Dichter go or where did Belfort go? I'll have this. Well, all of them were under court orders to. Tom Marazzo became a figure because he was last man standing, because he wasn't a big enough figure that he was able to give that final press conference when everything was hectic. And then like he started a Twitter account. And this is where I'll be like, sorry guys for the Tom Marazzo thing. But the government froze his bank accounts and everything, which was horrible. Like Tom Marazzo shouldn't have been, like he lost his job for criticizing COVID mandates, and he got his bank account frozen, and like there was problems with medication in his children, and heart goes out to him. That's absolutely horrible that happened, and I tried my hardest to help him. So when he put a feeling out on Twitter, he's like, hi guys, can anyone get me in touch with Viva Fry to whatever? I was like, well, I can. I have Viva's number, so I'll text him. Because, we had met during the convoy and worked together on some stuff. And I'm like, hey, do you want to talk to Tom Marazzo, one of the all-over guys of the convoy? And like, whatever, sure. So I connected him with Viva Fry, and I helped him like sort of get his name out there and interviewed him for some articles and gave him a bit of a push because people needed a face for the convoy. And you know what? He had his bank account frozen. He's on our side. I like helping people out if they're on our side. Okay, push. Go. Right. Call yourself organizer, whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not one of those guys who's like, no, I did more for the convoy with my filming than he did, so why is he getting famous? And I don't care. I don't care, right? Whatever. So we helped him out. Then he comes on TNT Live, and we do the episode where, he says things, and there's some red flags that come up to me, like when he told everyone not to protest to free Tamara Lich, and we were like, what the hell? And I have my friends text me like, what is this man saying? Get him off. I'm like, okay. So Tom is not good at strategy. He's not good at political strategy. Just not. He also doesn't understand what compound interest is, as we learned that on stream. Whatever. But there was then the behind the scenes where we told him about your experience with Derek Sloan and all the people in the Sloan campaign and what Sloan is doing. And we basically gave him all the evidence and broke down like all the behind the scenes stuff you can't really say, but like, here's where the Ontario party is like fake. Here's what runs it. And here's like where it's whatever. Right. And he listened to us and like, he's like, oh, okay. You know,
He was sort of like all shoulders a little bit, like, well, I guess that's something. And then he would just be like, well, I don't like Jim Karahalios. Well, I was told not to like him. Like when I say that, I mean like it was more so just I've heard stories, even though I'm directly telling you objectively provable things, like evidence of why you shouldn't trust Derek Sloan.
Yeah, it's like, but his reasonings are so ridiculous. It's like, well, Jim Karahalios is like he seems a bit abrasive or whatever, a bit too mean or something. And like, this is the guy who didn't give an interview like one time was like, what do you do in the Freedom Convoy? It's like, well, I went in there and I was just looking for alpha males. Like I went there and I found the alpha males. It's like, really? But like Jim
Karahalios has a temper and ego because people go around convention halls saying that his wife should divorce him and he gets a little ticked off.
Yeah. And like, you know, again, I'm not going to slag Derek Sloan for this, but like, didn't you say Derek Sloan's like some vegetarian who weighs like 150 pounds? Like
he weighs 160 pounds, I think. And he's like 6'3".
Yeah. Okay. So like, and again, like it's fine. Like Derek's allowed to be a vegetarian, but like, again, so this is like Tom Marazzo's like fake masculine BS, like of like, whatever. All right. So my problem with Tom Marazzo is there's just so much gross hypocrisy. And like, you know, and it's not that he blocked the two of us on Twitter. It's his reasoning behind it and it undermining the Freedom Convoy. So you could say like, you know, the Ontario Party was clearly undermining the Freedom Convoy, supporting Bill 100, which was the emergency measures used to steal the trucks from the truckers. But the reason why he blocked people like us and everyone from Twitter is he is of the opinion that politicians should not be criticized. He's getting into politics to do good, and people who want to bring negative energy to politics shouldn't be around. Well, weren't you part of the Freedom Convoy, which was a giant movement to criticize a sitting politician and the political faction and policy? Like, what type of message are you sending when, like, listen, I can understand if you block.
Didn't he literally say that he was being bullied? Didn't he actively say he was being bullied as well? He thought it was bullying to ask questions.
Yeah, like, and it's like, so there's two different things. It's like when Tom Marazzo was a Freedom Convoy organizer who was persecuted by the government and the government took away his ability to pay for medication for his children, he had my full 100% support. I was happy to write articles about the government doing such, give him a platform, help connect him to other people with a platform, use the full extent of my Rolodex to enable Freedom Convoy organizer, whatever, Tom Marazzo. Even though, what did he do? Whatever. He's a tier B organizer. Who cares? I don't care. I would help him. But once you cross over and you become a political figure, you get into politics and you run, well, then you become a manifestation for what your party espouses. And if you're running for a party that I have already shown to you one-on-one how it is undermining the very movement you claim to represent. So I was helping out Freedom Convoy organizer Tom Marazzo because I want to help out the innocent people who've been persecuted by the government because of their role in the Freedom Convoy, because I don't think the Freedom Convoy was illegal. But when you join the political party that is helping undermine the Freedom Convoy, well, then I'm going to ask you questions. And when you choose to run for the Ontario Party, I'm going to start asking questions about the Ontario Party's policies and why you're supporting them. That is now your new role. And if you're going to be like, well, this is bullying and politics isn't about journalists asking politicians questions, blocked. Well, like, okay. Like now you're not a serious figure. Like you're like, this is a guy, it's so obvious long-term that Tom Marazzo is going to say something or do something or get into bed with the wrong people or throw someone under the bus for what, like, this is not a political mastermind. This is not someone who we should be looking to for guidance. Maybe he's very good at logistics. Maybe he can move trucks from point A to point B very well, as long as he doesn't have to do compound interest on how much the trucks cost. But this is someone who it's clear his ego is in the way. And his ego is in the way that he is undermining the movement he claims to represent. And his ego is in the way that it might get an innocent woman put in jail. And this is now why I feel the need, and we feel the need now to speak up on this.
Because we've been talking about this a lot behind the scenes in terms of, well, the JCCF just did this and Tom Razzo just said this, and we're just mostly like, leave it. It's a little bit kind of behind the scenes type stuff that it's really hard to explain, and there's not enough public information about it for people to just believe you when you say it, or to people to have
it's like
to believe you right away. But
and we're not going to start like a war with the JCF based on like what they're doing behind the scenes and how it's not that.
And half of this is just giving advice. Stop it. Just stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah. It's just we've consistently seen the JCCF make bad moves that don't help Tamara and actively undermine her. But this is now too egregious. This is you've already the Crown and the prosecutor have already shown to you, given you evidence that if you put Tamara Lich in the same room as Tom Razzo, they're going to throw her in jail. And your lawyers suck so badly that she's been in jail for months already. You talk to lawyers worth the money. Like there are a bunch of dumb lawyers, whatever. And there's a lot of really good. You talk to any good lawyer, and all of them will tell you there's no way she should have spent a second in jail. And if she was their client, she wouldn't have spent any time in jail. And I hope if you know Tamara Lich, get her new lawyers. I get that JCCF defends people on the political right from the bad government, but they do it so poorly, right? The JCCF, right? John Carpray had the scandal where he had a PI stalk a judge. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Also, the JCCF has very poor oversight in the sense that it has a board of two people.
Yeah, the board.
This is an organization that brings in tens of millions of dollars a year, and I think that's usually and that's like a non-COVID year, maybe a COVID year. They've been raising tens of millions now, but still, it's like that's two people overseeing how they're going to be operating with that massive a budget.
And I know the head of the board isn't a lawyer. It's Tanya Granick-Allen's husband, and I know he's not a lawyer. That's all I know about him. I just is the other guy a lawyer? I don't know. But yeah, you're right. It's a board of two people. They're this is the other thing that I don't want to when people say where did the money for the Freedom Convoy go? Who has the money for the Freedom Convoy? It's actually not the JCCF has it. So it's not in the hands of Dictor or Bulford or Tamara. No one ran away with the money. The money is in the coffers of the JCCF. The JCCF managed to swindle that money into their coffers. And the way that here's we're not making any accusations here. I want to be clear. But I'm just going to point out what I understand of where the money is right now. So the Freedom Convoy raised $10 million through GoFundMe. Only $1 million was released from the GoFundMe. That ended up in TD Bank, which froze it. Then there's the Give, Send, Go, which the government blocked from getting in. And some of that money got put in and frozen. And that money that kind of got frozen or put in, like the Bitcoin money, got to truckers, except for a couple 100,000, which was seized from Bitcoin Caribou's house. Whatever, Bitcoiners are so anonymous. Never say my name because okay, whatever. So all the money that got frozen and put into escrow, all of it is basically outlined for the use of legal fees right now for the board of the Freedom Convoy. So the Freedom Convoy board, somehow all the original main guys are now off it. Tamara's off it, Dictor's off it. Even the original Chad, all the original convoy organizers who had formed the Freedom Convoy board and organization, all of them have been removed from the board systematically, and it's now new people. But what the money is in escrow for, all the money that people gave for the truckers, it's now in escrow to defend this Freedom Convoy organization. And the organization they have a legal retainer with. This is why I mentioned kind of weird that JCCF has a retainer when they're not a law firm. They're an activist group that subcontracts out law firms. So all the money that where'd it go? It's kind of tied up in escrow. And so I'm not making any concessions, but if you understand where we're going with this is if there's tons of legal problems, well, this is tons of money to be used on legal matters, and the lawyers get the money to do legal work. Now, lawyers get paid whether they do good work or bad work. So can you see why it might not be so crazy that the organization that benefits from there being more legal problems is acting in a way that might incur more legal problems? And this is why we're doing this topic tonight, because it's really important that we have an organization like the JCCF in a country like Canada, because, you know, I know of a nurse out in BC who the JCCF like helped defend because like she said biology is real, and, you know, they want to crucify her for transphobia or whatever, and she needs to be defended. And we absolutely need to do this in Canada. And the JCCF did have good lawyers that they subcontracted before John Carpray had a PI stalk a judge. But the problem is now this organization has fallen, and it's now gone to the point where its incentives are so perverse where they benefit more from doing a bad job than a good job. And when there's financial incentives towards failure, you tend to get failure, right? This is the exact same, like, I think we're being pretty intellectually consistent. This is the same thing I say about like a lot of the Indigenous problems is in Canada, we financially incentivize the leaders of the Indigenous communities to have their communities fail. When their communities fail, that is when the leaders get the most amount of money. So you're financially incentivizing failure. This is now the same problem with the JCCF, where the highest financial incentives are towards legal incompetence.
Well, and here's just one other thing as well, is that the problem with the JCCF too is it feels like it's far easier to get legally represented if your story is like, if you are already a high profile person, or that if your story becomes high profile. I know of a lot of people who did not actually get any JCCF like representation, or they didn't give them any funds to go hire a lawyer, despite the fact that the JCCF even mentioned their case. It just wasn't big enough for them to really get behind, in essence. And I think that really, like, what if you're only representing people who probably could have just started a fundraiser themselves and raised money? What are you actually doing other than just branding a case? That's kind of what they're doing, is that they're branding a case and then they're stapling John Carpay to a couple press conferences relating to it. It doesn't really do that much in terms of the courtroom, when all we're doing is essentially just having this weird middleman organization that organize activists. And I think that's a big problem everywhere, is that middlemen organizations basically suck up all the good content out of things, and then they kind of just throw out everything else, and like none of the problems actually get solved, but the middleman organization gets to sort of be alongside the issue that's happening. It's kind of honestly like like you could even say that this is what happens with conservative political parties, both the CPC and the PPC, that they'll sort of run alongside issues for like 2 seconds, and then they really won't do much with it, and then they'll leave. Yeah. And they'll sort of like pretend like they're with something. It's kind of like the problem with Pierre Poilievre. I don't like hate the guy, of course, but his support for certain things is very lukewarm until it's actually finally, it's until it's actually time for him to really make a tough stand because people are demanding it. That's not really useful for us. But if people are only showing up because of what they could benefit from it, well, then we're never going to get anywhere, because there's really not that much benefit to suck out of these situations. There's a lot more hard work to do than there is, than there is, like, I guess, what is it, like wave surfing? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that hits up. So again, my screen's off. So do I, like, I know we've done an hour. Is there anything in the comments that we should address? You can read some out, or?
No, other than BL saying that my cranium's getting bigger. So I think we can just
so much knowledge.
Yeah, we'll pass over that. I don't know. I don't think there's really anything else for us to do. Maybe we'll do a follow-up on this next week, because I guarantee that this is going to have some fallout to it if that event goes ahead and whatnot. And hopefully we have one of two different Told You So episodes next week. Either that they like tell Tom Marazzo not to come to the event and everything goes far smoother, or they just or like the board of advisors to the JCCF tells them to like figure it out, and or like Tamara Lich gets a new lawyer or whatever, or Tamara Lich gets arrested, and we can also say I told you so because we said that this is what was going to happen, and it happened. Well, I guess.
Again, this is why we did this a week early. Is like, kind of again, I really hope we have or I told you so, or this doesn't manifest. I really hope this either gets canceled or Tom Marazzo decides not to go, or there's enough pressure where people say, Tom, why are you doing this? Or like JCCF, like, why are you doing this? The JCCF realized, like, okay, like this is we can't be seen to be this cavalier with a woman's freedom as we are being, and they decide to shut this down, and Tamara doesn't get sent back to jail, because I don't want to see another 2 weeks of Tamara Lich in jail. And listen, it's great content for our financial incentives are actually that Tamara goes to jail.
Yeah.
If you want to look at financial incentives for the National Telegraph, we get more clicks when Tamara's in jail than we don't. let me do. If you want to look at us as political ideologues, Tamara is a much better martyr than a free woman in her house, right? For the cause, it's a better propaganda tool when we say Tamara's an innocent woman in jail, free Tamara. But as morally or trying to be morally upstanding human beings, our goal is actually to not have Tamara Lich be in jail because that sucks. And the reason we get so mad when she is because it's a moral abomination that makes the country.
Yeah, like the thing is, I never want to be at the point where someone gets arrested or someone gets hurt, and I'm like, well, Tamara Lich is in prison.ca, and then a bunch of money starts calling in or whatever, and everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say that. But like there is like we shouldn't be rooting for that. I think that we should be actually wanting good things to happen, not just for the whole country to sort of burn down slowly enough that we can roast some marshmallows on it.
Yeah.
Anyways, but I guess this is a great place for us to end off. Maybe actually hit us with topics that you guys want us to talk about for next week. You can just message the Facebook page, message us on Twitter or whatever. If you guys want us to talk about anything, we'll try and work it into the show. But until next time, have a great day.